grams and putting our answer in moles. So we started, our first question that we did, we started with moles and we wanted to put our answer in grams. So now we're going to switch. And if we go back up to our options, because we're given grams to start with, we're going to use our molar mass conversion and then our mole ratio. So our question is, how many moles of O2 are needed to react to produce 200 grams of Na2O? So we're going, like we said, from grams to moles. So what we start with, our known number, is 200 grams of Na2O. And then what we want our answer in, or what they're asking for, is moles of O2. So we know our answer should be moles of O2. And we start with 200 grams of Na2O. So we can go ahead and put that in the front. Again, make sure you put which molecule you have because we're going from one to the other. You want to know like what is what. So because we start with grams of Na2O, the only conversion that has grams is our molar mass. And our molar mass conversion only lets us go between grams and moles of the same substance. Like we can't change which substance we have through our molar mass because it only lets us know how many moles of the substance we have, not how many moles or grams of a different substance we have. So we have to use our molar mass conversion first. To get our answer or get our starting number into moles. Because we can only use our mole ratio as the conversion to change from Na2O to O2, one substance to a different substance. So our second conversion is going to be our mole, it is going to be our mole ratio. And that will allow us to get from moles of Na2O to moles of O2. So our molar mass, because we're starting with grams of Na2O, the molar mass that we're looking for is for Na2O. Because we have to put that into moles before we can change it. So that's the molar mass we want to look for. And from the previous day, or the previous video, we know that our molar mass of Na2O is 61.98. So we know our molar mass of Na2O is going to be 61.98 grams per mole. So our next step is finding our conversion factor for our mole ratio. We know that we're going between Na2O and O2. So that's going to be what our mole ratio is between. For how many moles of Na2O, we have to have a certain number of moles of O2. And we're going to get those numbers from the balanced equation. So our balanced equation is 4Na plus O2 yields 2Na2O. Our coefficient number on Na2O is 2, so that's going to be our number of moles in our mole ratio. For O2, it doesn't have a coefficient, so it's just going to be 1. No number equals 1. So that is our mole ratio. Now we can go ahead and set up our equation and then solve. So our first step was writing the number that we start with in the front, which we said was 200 grams of Na2O. So our first conversion that we have to do is our molar mass to change from grams of Na2O into moles of Na2O. So we're going to go ahead and put our old units on the bottom. And our old units are what we start with, which was grams of Na2O. Our new units are moles of Na2O because we need to put it into moles in order to do our mole ratio. So that unit goes on top. Our last step is to match the numbers from our molar mass with those units. So in our molar mass, we have 61.98 grams. We're going to put that with the grams of Na2O for 1 mole of it. Our next step is to do our second conversion, our mole ratio. We said in the last question that our first new unit becomes our second old unit. So we're going to go ahead and put those on that unit, moles of Na2O, on the bottom because it was our new unit in our first conversion, and now it's our old unit because we have to change from moles of Na2O to moles of O2. And so moles of O2 are going to be our new unit. We're going to put that up at the top because that's what we want our answer in. And we can change now from one substance to the other. Our last step before we go ahead and put it in the calculator is that we are going to put our numbers from our mole ratio with the units that go with it. So for moles of O2 in our mole ratio, we have 1, so we're going to put a 1 with it. And then for moles of Na2O, we have a 2, so we're going to put a 2 with it. And our last step is to calculate. Actually, before our last step, we're going to make sure that our units cancel out. So we start with grams of Na2O, and then on the bottom we have grams of Na2O, and so they cancel out. We have one divided by the other. Our first new unit is up top, and it should match our second old unit that is on the bottom, which they do, and so these cancel out. What we're left with is moles of O2, which is our answer. And so now we can calculate. So we're going to put it in our calculator. 200 times 1 over what's our molar mass? 61.98 times 1 over 2, which equals 1.61 moles. So our answer is 1.61 moles of O2. And so when you are doing multi-step equations, you have to look at what do they give you to start with and what do they want. Then our next question is to determine, well, can we change into moles, like change our substance through our mole ratio right away? Or do we have to put it into moles to change it in from one substance to the other through our mole ratio? Based on that, you will be able to determine what conversion goes first and what conversion goes second. And so in our next video, we're going to look at 3-step stoichiometry questions where we're given grams to start with, and they want you to put it into grams of another molecule.